to be our presenter today. So, my name is, excuse me, my name is Beth Andes, and I just want to run through the format once again in case you're not familiar. What we like to do is let our speaker speak uninterrupted for as long as she chooses to. Some speak for 15 minutes, some go for 45, at which point I go. And when Rayanne is finished, we will just take a few seconds, like a minute, really, 60 seconds to just be in silence, let our thoughts settle. And then there'll be time for questions. So if you do have a question at that time, raise your hand and I'll bring you the microphone so both the question and the answer can get on our YouTube channel. Without further ado, a woman who needs no introduction, Rayanne Nixon.
Greetings. Um, yeah, I've uh, uh, I've been around for 86 years, and it was hard to condense what was important to me or whatever in 45 minutes. And so you may have to beat me on the head and tell me to shut up. But anyhow, we'll try. And this thing has made me really kind of nervous, and it has caused me to reflect on a whole lot of stuff that I hadn't thought about for a very long time, and revise. And I tested it out on Sherry and on Barbara Field. And anyhow, we'll see. And make me every now and then I may get too carried away with something. Anyhow, I was the oldest of four children. We were born, or I was born on the farm actually, and there were the three of us, the three oldest, were fairly close. We did a lot of social stuff together, and in retrospect, I realized that we were sort of well, we were interconnected and we supported each other. And also, in retrospect, I wondered about my younger brother, who was significantly younger than the rest of us, and was kind of left out of all this. And anyhow, I thought about that. My father was the youngest son who was still at home when he graduated from high school. And I think they thought of themselves as fairly affluent. He had a twin sister and a younger sister, but his other brothers had all gone off someplace. One joined the Navy and don't know what all. Really wanted to go to college. He was intellectually curious and he really wanted to go to college. But when he proposed this to his father, he was informed that the farm was heavily mortgaged. And if he would stay, he'd get it for himself and stay and pay off the mortgage, of course. Well, he did that. But I think that was the most miserable time of his life because all of his friends had gone off someplace. And he was madly in love with a woman who was my mother's cousin, 2 years older than him. And they'd had a romance, and he was absolutely certain that there was one true love in your life, and that was it. And he really believed that, even though he married my mother and they got along real well. My mother was my mother was intelligent too. They were both quite intelligent, and my mother was kind of she was really a feminist. She wouldn't like you to say that, but she was. She came from a German Missouri Synod Lutheran family. Well, Papa had an interesting habit. He used weird phraseology, and I'm not sure that's a real word, but he would say funny things. I remember specifically one time he was sort of standing there, he was preparing to go someplace, and he said to himself, "I think I shall sally forth." He said stuff like that all the time, and we all picked it up. We put on our night garments to go to our nests. George, I think, will remember Brother Deer was called Brother Deer, still called Brother Deer. There were all that kind of stuff, and our friends picked that up too. Uh, and in high school and college, we brought friends home. And anyhow, one time Papa took us to the side and said, "I wish you'd quit bringing so many people home and pay more attention to your mother." And I guess we tried to do that, but who knows? Mrs. Martin was a Mrs. Martin was my first grade teacher. And when I look at all the pictures of us in the first, second, and whatever grade, we had huge classes, 30 of them, little squirming kids. We didn't have kindergarten to prepare us for this. Well, so Mrs. Martin deserves a few, well, she isn't as bad as I thought of her, but she didn't like me much. She segregated the kids into the farm kids and the town kids. Well,
Oh,
the farm kids were mostly really poor. And although that changed fairly quickly when he paid off the farm and began to make money. Let's see, what is this? Anyhow, my mother was a Missouri Synod Lutheran, and my father had no church at all, and he actually came from an Irish family. He married up his wife. My grandmother was the one who had more money, I think. But anyhow, that was the story. Now, where am I here? Anyhow, we went to the Missouri Synod Lutheran Church, which was a country church right outside of Craig, Missouri, and that was quite an interesting. They were German and very very tied to new rules and stuff. And one of the things we had to do when we were adolescents was go to Saturday school. Now, Saturday school was god awful. It consisted of no exchange of ideas or any of that kind of stuff. It consisted of memorization and recitation. It was awful. It was downright awful. And then around Christmas, we Sunday afternoon was taken up with memorization and recitation in preparation for the church for the New Year Christmas Eve service. Anyhow, let's see, where am I? Uh, I I thought of myself during this time as kind of a misfit. I didn't think people actually paid any attention to me, and I was kind of invisible, I thought. Although later I heard people say that I was stuck up. Anyhow, I did get a little attention by making things. I liked to sew. I made clothes and wore them to school. In college, I majored in home ec mainly because I liked to sew. And at that time, we thought of as home ec as cooking and sewing. But at that time, uh, the home ec was trying to discard that image to become uh, more socially acceptable, I guess. And the curriculum for home ec education majors was really very tough. That didn't matter. Most people. It was a time when women were going out, were working, and so it was believed that anybody could cook and sew. Well, that created all kinds of problems, and also home ec education. We were told that we should make our curriculum more something other than cooking and sewing. They didn't tell us what, but something other than cooking and sewing. And the first summer after I got out of after the first summer after the first year, I went to school because I didn't know what else to do. Didn't have another job, didn't know what else to do. So I did that and I acquired some hours which became useful later on. Um, and it must have been in the third year of college that I had my first art course and I fell in love. Oh my, oh my. And then my first summer of getting a few more hours came in useful because most homework people could not could there was not room for a minor, but I was able to get a minor in art, and I really did love art. And then we began to go to Colorado in the summer, and let's see, what was it? Oh, let's see, where am I? I have a hard time with all this. Anyhow, the third summer was in Colorado. uh, as a waitress. We learned that Colorado was a good place to go take a summer job because we didn't have to lie to them about when we would quit or anything because it was their schedule corresponded with ours. Um, Anyhow, I got a job in Hannibal. Oh, I got a job in Hannibal teaching home ec. There were practically no jobs in art because you didn't have to teach. They didn't have to give you art, and they didn't. So, so I was supposed to teach in Hannibal. And then my friend Marilyn and I had gone through 16 years of school together, both at Mound City and then at Maryville. And we both had or had teaching jobs, and we went off to Colorado to get to do our waitress business. And anyhow, we got a job at a kind of resort kind of place in near Boulder, Colorado. It had a restaurant, but attached was a big swimming pool and a bunch of cabins. And it was there that I met Herschel. Now, Herschel was 39 years old, a Canadian, and an artist. At that time, I was artist meant, oh my, they were like a deity as far as I was concerned. That is until people began to call me artist, and then I didn't believe that anymore. Uh, Herschel was he designed shoe stores, and he painted watercolors, and he spent a lot more time at this place than he'd planned to because he'd recently gotten a divorce, and this was kind of a finding himself trip. He stayed a lot longer, and we spent a lot of time at this place called Lookout Point, which is on a mountain above the resort, above the restaurant. And we exchanged addresses and stuff, and eventually he went on his trip. I got letters from him, and he came to Hannibal, but eventually it sort of died out. I thought it was because I wouldn't sleep with him, but I'm pretty sure it had to do with I was immature and really kind of dumb and it gradually petered out. And Akula who was the first year teacher at Hannibal, and also there were only two of us. Most of the other teachers were the age of our parents,
Mm.
and except for a few married men who would hit on us when they got a chance. And anyhow, it was a pretty miserable place. And we were supposed to get more graduate credit for each year that we taught. So I hatched out this plan to go to Missoula, Montana to take a course or so, and then on to the World's Fair. I had an elevated idea of what a World's Fair was, having read a lot of stuff by people who had seen the first one in the early 1900s, and that was it was not the same. Anyhow, we went off to Missoula, Montana, and oh my, I had a social life. It was wonderful. And we went on to the World's Fair, which was pretty much a bust. And so on our return home, I began to plot a year in graduate school where there would probably be a social life. I wasn't that eager for education or anything. I just thought that'd be nice. Oh, and the course that I took at Missoula was a sewing course, and it was downright ridiculous. And this was kind of a sign of what was going on. There were all kinds of weird ideas that we learned in graduate school, of course. Oh, Thanksgiving holiday, I went home, and Kula went with me because her parents were in uh, were were in Texas, and my sister's boyfriend was had been was had rented a place at Big Lake with one or two of his friends. I'm not sure which, but we were going to go visit the boyfriends and probably drink a little. I don't know. Anyhow, we did. We went to Big Lake, and one of his friends was a social worker who was a couple years older than me, I think. I don't know. Anyhow, he was named Denny. Well, now uh, Denny had spent a good deal of his adult life in a Catholic seminary, preparing to be a priest. And anyhow, we became a couple. And anyhow, the would-be priest and the Missouri Synod Lutheran decided to sin. And another thing I learned about him was that he had that the reason he had gone to seminary was because he had tested high on an IQ test, and they decided everybody like that was where they should be. They should become priests. And it was the high IQ and not the love of God that caused him to do what he did. And let's see what happened. And anyhow, we went off to Colorado and well, got more money so that we could go to Missouri University. And let's see. And Denny and I wrote, and somewhere along the line, must have been one of those letters. He said he had quit the social work job and he had enrolled in law school at MU. It did not occur to me that I was the reason. Maybe I was, maybe I wasn't. Anyhow, we dated for a whole year. We actually didn't mesh very well. And but anyhow, we dated for a whole year. I went to a few loss parties after I got my degree. Kula had some sort of bad thing, and she couldn't finish her degree in a year, so she was still down there. And anyhow, I got a job in a museum as an educator, and an educator was a hopped up docent, and we gave lectures on things. I got the planetarium and astronomy, and birds and all kinds of stuff. But I loved museums, and my there were two of us, and we were both new, although this was an established program. In our office, we found no materials at all. And so later on, we learned that there had been a big shakeup. And the director, the assistant, I'm not sure there was an assistant, the director was fired, and and why the educators were fired, I do not know. But behind it all was the costume lady. Now, the costume lady was not an employee of the museum, but she had an office that made the directors look like nothing. And she was a real dominant figure. We learned later that there had been this big shakeup, and it had been caused by her.
Mm.
And they also learned that they had seen in my transcript listed a course in historic costume. Now they like to talk about how the museum had the third largest collection of costumes. Well, large, you can imagine you could file a lot of clothes into something, and it would be the third largest. And somewhere along the line, I never had a real discussion with this lady, and it took me a long time to learn what everything was all about. Um, and I would for a long time. To, spent a long time deluding myself about the actual purpose of the costume collection in the museum itself. It was supposed to elevate the costume lady's position. It was a social climbing thing, and all of it was used that way. The board of directors and everything. And here I was. I believed that I was supposed to show the costumes. Well, there was another shakeup. They fired everybody but us. They told us that we were good, and we had been. They thought we would fall on our face, and we had done quite well, it seems. And so they rehired one of the other educators who'd been fired in the first shakeup, and that allowed me to work on the costume collection. And I spent a lot of time cataloging and storing it properly, et cetera, et cetera. All the time, not realizing that that wasn't its point at all. And and as far as religion is concerned, I continued to go to this church in Northeast. I think Keith talked about that. The church, children's, yeah, Children's Memorial, and you must have succeeded the minister who was there when I was there. Yeah, and anyhow, I went to that church, and I sent a letter to my minister at home, Missouri Senate, that I wanted to be my membership transferred. And he wrote back a letter. Well, I misspelled words. He wasn't too bright. And he said I'd probably burn in hell if I went to any church other than Missouri Senate. And that didn't matter. Later on in the summer, they had a substitute minister for the church, for the guy, the regular minister, and he spoke about witchcraft and all the bad guys out there, and uh, it was disgusting. I got up and walked out, stomped out, actually. Later on, he called me and told me that, well, his sermon wasn't as good as it should have been because somebody had stolen all the books on witchcraft from the library. I didn't return. There was another big job shakeup, and since I had the stuff all cataloged and everything, I was a prime candidate for being fired. And actually, they fired almost everybody in the third shakeup. They either fired or they quit, and these were all my friends, and that became sort of my social group. And in looking for another job, I tried all kinds of things, and finally, I got a sub job teaching art at Southeast High School. And I got a lot of help from the other art teachers, and it was going along fairly well, considering Southeast High School was absolutely overloaded. I mean, the classes were enormous. Took forever to take just to take roll and figure out who was there. Um, And a carpool friend introduced me to another artist, and this guy was a Hallmark artist, and he had recently divorced. He had 5 children and uh, big child support payments. He was not a very happy person. He was actually miserable because his ex-wife had married his best friend. Yep, yep. And let's see. Anyhow, the one time my roommate had just gotten married and moved out, and so I was living in a 2-bedroom duplex, and so he moved in because there was a big mess with the apartment he rented, so he moved in with me. And somewhere along the line, the duplex came up for sale. He urged me to buy it, which I did. We kept our money all separate. And anyhow, one time I came home from school, and there was Dick. He had talked to somebody on the phone. He called them. They were career opportunities or something. And this guy that he was talking to was all excited. Had him all excited about buying a fishworm farm, which we could put in the basement. Well, I listened to this, and then I started arguing with me, and with him, and we argued for a very long time. And finally, he concluded this all with, "Nobody else is showing me a way out," which seemed, and I kind of figured out that that was one of the clues that I had. I have a theory about logic and how it influences our decisions, how, lo- how our decision making. In many instances, other factors are much, much more important, like status and ways out. Anyhow, eventually he disappeared, and I got to this church through Forum. And I remember Ginger talked about how Forum used to have college professors, and that must have been the time that I started. I'd read in the paper what the topic was going to be, and I'd come. And I eventually got into the church and all the people who were there. I met Sherry one of those times, and uh, I had no roommate at the time, and she was looking for a place to closer to her job at the time. Um, and let's see. Oh, I had begun to when Deck was still there. I had begun to send slides of my work. Oh, I'd started doing fiber art. I was that was when Janet Kuberlane's stuff was at the hotel, and there was a lot of publicity about that, and it inspired me a lot. And I started doing things you hang on the wall, and not. Yeah, yeah. And that was before I bought a loom. These were just things that I did freehand, and I sold a bunch of, and I kept sending things off and somewhere along the line somebody rejected my fiber and said they didn't take fiber. So I had this picture. It was a ridiculous picture of my bare feet on a newspaper. It was a watercolor. I sent it, and they took it. They hung it in a corner, and somebody bought it. Love that. It was hard to believe. Yeah. Anyhow, I I thought I'd do a lot of watercolor when I retired. I didn't actually. I didn't like to do watercolor much. And but after retirement, I started in a ceramics class. It was at Westport Community Center. And one day when I headed for the ceramics class, I noticed that the two cement dragons that I'd gotten for retirement were gone from my front yard. And I went off to class and raved on about the loss of my dragons. And I began to make dragons. I made ceramic dragons, and people bought them. And anyhow, then and my friend Sue and she was another ceramics person. I figured out that my pots looked like everybody else's, except when you inspected them, they weren't as well done. As But dragons were a different story. Nobody made dragons. So Sue and I had a booth at one of the I think the Pieceworks show. And doing this Odyssey has made me realize how lucky I've been with my various support systems, my parents, my siblings, Cherry and the neighbor Bill across the street. I'm an atheist. It seems to me that the belief in God isn't always connected to a moral code, which I think uh, has more to do with religion than God. So that's kind of where I stand. That's it. Did I make it?
You did great. Thank you. Okay, so let's take our minute just to breathe. Okay. And as George passes the basket for our offering, would anybody like to ask a question? All right.
It's always amazing to realize what you don't know about the people you've known for forever, it seems, anyway. So, and I was trying to put things in perspective. Was it the Northeast, the Kansas City Museum there that you were at, or what museum was it?
The Kansas
And
City Museum in
it was
Northeast.
okay. And
Yeah.
what time frame was that? And the Southeast High School
Well, let's see, when was it? I'm trying to think. Let's see, not
decade,
late 60s, I think. I don't know.
and Southeast High School was approximately
Southeast High School. That Southeast High School was kind of the end of the desegregation, and the thing that they did, uh, I don't think I went through all of this about how I was teaching art, and then I was replaced by another teacher, a tenured teacher. Well, what they were doing was the good black teachers were sent to white schools and vice versa. And the one who replaced me was not exactly very good. And did I say that they gave me a job? They made up a job for me.
what year was it?
I don't know. I don't know, late 60s, early 70s, somewhere around. I don't know. I was at the museum for 7 years.
I was wondering why you didn't mention teaching at our
Fort
elementary
Osage.
school. Yeah, at Fort Osage, because
Yeah,
I was a counselor and you were at an Elm Grove and teaching art.
yeah, I did. Well, it was, yeah, it was after the Dick Bennett thing, and let's see. I had, I taught at Southeast. I taught Kansas City, Missouri for quite a long time, and then a job came, and my sister was there. And anyhow, she kind of instructed me to try that one, and because the Fort Osage job was it was wonderful. There were three of us, and we had it. We worked together, and it was ideal. Yeah, yeah. I retired from Fort Osage.
If you can remember, what year did you first come to All Souls?
I
And
have no idea.
what?
70s,
Okay,
whenever.
that's good enough. Decade of the 70s. Okay.
Yeah, yeah.
And why have you stayed?
Why? Why did I stay?
Yeah. What do you find that you like about All Souls?
Oh, well, the religion or lack thereof. I mean, it's about as far removed from Missouri Senate as you can get. I mean, memorizing and reciting back, exchange of ideas, which is what I think it should be. Well, I, for one, am one of those people who bought your stuff. I don't believe I have the photo of your feet, but I do have at least five of your dragons, including one that you made in the likeness of George W. Bush. I don't know if you remember that one. Oh, it was amazing.
Oh,
And your fiber art, which is so wonderful. The happy fish are on my living room wall, and it's
oh,
right where I sit so I can look at it because I love it so much. So, what is it that you find as inspiration for your art? I don't know. Uh, just anything. Yeah. Sometimes it's the fiber itself. I'm planning a weird thing with only white stuff, and mainly based on the weaving. And I don't know. It may not work, but I'll try it. I go through various phases.
Have you ever served on the board of trustees for All Souls?
Have
And
I
have you ever served on the board of trustees for All Souls? And talk about
No,
what about some of the committees? Can you tell us about your experience with that?
with art committee. Oh yeah, I was on the art committee. Me and Ginger and yeah, yeah, Trudy was there, and I think they talked me into running for the board once, but I gave a talk that said I don't want to. Please don't vote for me.
That's hilarious.
I distinctly remember you're saying I'm not a committee person. I'll do lots of other things, but I'm not a committee person. Does
Oh,
that sound like you?
yeah, it does. It does. Yeah, I'm actually a an Indian, not a chief.
My favorite Rand Nixon story is you probably know that one.
Oh, the vinegar bottle.
Yeah, she knew. I we all went on canoe trips, and I came down to Bennett Springs to the campground, and we were there early. Sarah was with me, and here's Rand Nixon, the only person in the campground, I guess. And I'm setting up my stuff, and I finally get in a chair, and I'm about ready to pass out and sleep because I've been. Anyway, she pulls out a bottle of vinegar and takes a good um, cup of it and swings, takes a drink, uh, and she says, "George, I think maybe you ought to have a glass of this." Well, I was like totally, what the heck is in her vinegar bottle? Anyway, it turned out to be, I think, it was brandy, and
Oh no, it was probably bourbon or scotch.
bourbon or whatever. Anyway, we became. That's when I became friends with Rand Nixon, and uh, and I've always appreciated her art. In fact,
Vinegar bottle.
I've had two of the gargoyles.
Oh,
One of them in my back, overlooking my.
goddamn.
Okay, well, time up. All right. Anybody else? Ginger, we're gonna. Oh,
Oh, that's okay. Ginger, did you? No. Okay.
Talking about the dragons.
Well, I will say one other thing about Rayanne more recently is, in spite of her really bad hip, she has done sandwich making for, I mean, the hours that you put in are just amazing. So artistic, home ec. Now, you didn't mention cooking. You said that cooking and sewing was what home ec was like. Are you a cook?
Sort of. I don't know. I put things together and they're not always compatible.
And do you still sew?
Not really. No. No, I just I wear the same clothes all the time.
You did Meals on Wheels long time.
I
You've
did
been
what?
doing Meals on Wheels.
Oh yeah, yeah. Bill and I do that. The neighbor. We've done it for years and years and years. Yeah.
And
Yeah.
play bridge?
Yeah, I play bridge and mahjong. Two kinds of mahjong.
Well, if there are no more questions, Your Honor, you may step down. I really want to thank you for coming today and doing something, even though it made you nervous. I thought you did a great job.
I
Thank you.
used to do a lot of public speaking, but it's been years.